Hello and welcome back. It's Art of Cycling and I'm Greg Leach. And I know I haven't posted for a while and this is why. So that sketchbook was all the paintings I had to frame on the right hand side. These are the stacks you can't really see. Of course the studio, as you notice, is completely covered in sawdust. So I thought I'd walk you through the last two pieces while finishing them up. So these are the last two frames. They're built. The back has been painted white and then polyurethaned. And now I'm going to take a 220 grit sandpaper to the frame and get that so I get a nice beautiful shiny coat. And I'm using a clear gloss so you can see acrylic based polyurethane. I had been using shellac and then it dawned on me there's acid in shellac. So of course taking the compressor, blowing off all the dust, which is part of the reason why there's dust everywhere, putting on the final coat. And you'll notice that it only comes in a little bit on the white background, and that's because you won't see all of it. So, no reason to spend money I don't need to. And so this everything again is acrylic, so acid free. So of course, and the other nice thing about this is it only takes about 2 hours to dry. So obviously that time is gone. And now I'm grabbing the artwork. So it's these two pieces. So this happen to be two of my favorite. The one in the distance is within her reach. My wife's stretching out her shoulder. After that painting was done, she did have shoulder surgery. Based on a Monet, and you will get to see this in a little bit. And I used to, I've gone through so many variations on framing technique. And what I've settled on now for, well, certainly since 2020, I think a little bit before that, is not putting the pieces under glass. I mean, it is 100% rag paper. It is oil paint. You don't put an oil painting under glass. So I've come to the same conclusion with these. I probably mentioned that I have a friend who has a piece pinned to the wall in his kitchen that's been there since the 90s. And it still looks like the day I painted it. That was part of the inspiration. Now, when these hang on the wall, you have critters living in my studio. Unfortunately, I have squirrels living in the attic. But that's this spring's project. I've got to evict them. So I'm making sure there's no spider webs on the backside. That's what I was doing. Now I'm making sure the piece of artwork fits and getting it lined up. And of course, once they're off the wall, I roll them up and they clearly want to roll back up again. So sort of fighting that. But the way I attach these now, I've done, like I said, various methodologies. And one was using linen tape. And I've got pieces where the linen tape has failed over time. Thumbtacks won't. And because I paint on the wall, there's already holes in the paper. Because I just push pin these to the wall I've seen in the previous videos. So, so the first step, of course, is to get it lined up, laid out, make sure it's the right size. Sometimes, I measured, I can't cut a straight line to save my soul. And so sometimes I, took the measurements to build the frame from the short side without realizing it and have to resize the paper a bit. But in this case, neither of these had to be resized. So I'm getting it flat first and putting the thumbtacks into the existing holes. This painting is called Let's Dance and is a reinterpretation of Matisse's The Dance. So like I say, first put him in the existing holes, and of course because of that, that's done sort of randomly when I put the piece on the wall. There's no specific pattern. Like, if I was a little more of an exacting person, I would sit here and measure out an equal portion, but then you'd have to like measure the width, decide by, you know, whatever number you wanted to do, and then go through and measure those. But of course, none of these are consistent in size, so you'd be constantly, it's just too much math. So I just eyeball it. And I'm just using white thumbtacks, so you don't really notice them. And of course, this is the way I choose to frame the work. It's something that I can do all myself. I think my total cost for framing I have my sketchbook right by me. So how many pieces of work was this? Oh, that's a different show. That can't be true. I know, that's this show. So yeah, I framed 15 paintings for, not counting time, not figuring my time into it, so no labor costs, but roughly $1,200 in materials, give or take. And at this scale, this painting alone would have cost over $1,200 at a frame shop. So it's nice to have a skill set that can enable me to be able to build these frames. So you can see just going through and put enough pieces in. And you can see in the foreground here on this edge closest to us how it bends up. Of course, now once I put the thumbtacks in, you can't see the edge of that paper from this angle. So, like I say, finding the existing holes and then going in here and getting enough in that we don't get paper curling back up. Eventually the paper does relax, so some of that desired turn back up goes away. Right here, I was like, what's going on here? I just found the top of a thumbtack, and what I realized here is what happened. So when I tried to move that early on, sorry I didn't comment on when I did it, when I pulled it, I pulled off the white cap, so off of the T part of the thumbtack. So now I'm back here looking for a tool. Got the end nippers, which I use for pulling stuff. Of course, now I'm grabbing a piece of plywood. That was shaking the dust off there. So that, because I don't want to mark up the paper, so coming in here, and then I'm realizing that's not going to work anyway for that. So I'm just trying to grab the thumbtack. There we go. And of course, this is just off a frame. Now pulling that broken thumbtack out of there. There is a trash can where I threw that. I'm not saying I don't throw things on the floor all the time. Yeah, that's going to be the next fun video, as you see just how much of a mess has been left behind. So that's the piece put together. Of course, picking up all the thumbtacks. For some way, in my mind, it's easier to dump them on there and then pick them up as I need them than trying to get them out. Didn't know when we got this handheld vacuum how useful it would be in artwork preparation. But, so going through the spider web, sawdust, In some cases, loose little pieces of oil stick. I'm just getting it as clean as possible. I don't have a separate frame building space and painting space and painting storage space. I deal running two storage. Who knew when I built this that that would be the case? And I bet this is so this is pretty much bigger than I know it to be. And you may be able to tell, but I don't make that great. So here I just use sometimes in the creation of the piece of bits of oil stick to break off and stick to the wrong place. And so this is the last place to get rid of those pieces that don't enhance the painting and this one's really enhanced because this stuff. Apparently I decided that's enough. So the next step is to put the hangers on the back. And I don't use wires. Of course, you can see how big. So here's a chance to see this piece again. Now there is a video of this painting when I'm creating it, so you can go back through my history and see that painting coming to life. It has been one of the more popular videos. So now, like I said, I don't use painting wire or hanging wires. I just do the D-rings. So this took me a long time to figure out. It was finding here. I used to mark where I wanted the top of the D-ring to be, and I realized that was a very inexact science. So now I'm going 4 1/4 inches down and 2 inches in, and that's where I put the top screw on the plate of the D-rings. Does that make sense? So get out the D-ring, pull the screw, and of course the all-important. And then it's also easier if you attach the screw to the screw gun first. So you can see, but then you screw it in. And again, starting that screw right at that intersection point. And so you can see there's 2 holes, 2 screws. But the nice thing about this is it's a little more exacting when you're hanging the work. But once the work is hung, it'll never go crooked again, unless your wall shifts. Which, can happen, I guess. But you got bigger problems than crooked artwork at that point. And just screwing in the first one, making sure it's lined up properly. And of course, the other thing I started doing, which is part of the reason I'm running out of storage problems, I used to swap out artwork out of the frames all of the time. Looking for my Sharpie. But I made a commitment to myself that once the piece is framed, that's its frame. So I'm looking for my Sharpie and looking and looking. So all of this work is so here we go, of course the piece is called Mat Stands. For this exhibition I have coming up called Past is the Present's the Future. It'll be at the Hoyt Art Center up in Newcastle, PA. Opens on the first day of spring, that Saturday. Opening, I think, starts at noon if you're in that area. And then the other thing I do is stick a business card on here because, as you can see, that scribbly squiggly line is my signature. And my signature became a thing before I realized you need to be able to read my name. So I put my business card there on there as well, where you can read it if you want to get in touch with me. So here's just a time-lapse vision of this. So I do appreciate y'all watching. I hope you've made it to the end. And if you're not already subscribed, I hope you will. Of course, probably the next video will be the exhibition. I didn't shoot any video of the installation process. And of course, pretty soon we go back into full cycling. Got one of my favorite races coming up this weekend.